All right, hey VC, I'm Jamie. Welcome back. We're back with another video and back with, as promised, vinyl finds. So let's get right to it. First off, going to feature a Canadian artist, Amanda Marshall. This is a reissue of her debut album. This came out in 1995. I have this on CD, but now have it on vinyl. And Amanda Marshall, powerhouse vocals, pretty radio-friendly stuff. And in fact, the first 6 tracks on this album were all big radio hits in Canada. An artist well worth checking out if you're not familiar with her. She's got some new music coming out, and I don't think she's put out an album in about 20 years. And she's also back out on tour, and I'm going to be seeing her in concert in June. So this has been reissued on white vinyl. And I think this is the first time the hype sticker was initially on the shrink. First time I've seen a hype sticker on a hype sticker. I think they have reissued this, including her tour information on the hype sticker there. So Amanda Marshall. Really happy to get her debut album. Check her out if you're not familiar with her. Okay, we got more stuff. I remember Vinyl Archivist talking about this particular band. This is Captain Beyond. They only put out a few albums. Kind of a great, almost a rock supergroup, if you will. Rod Evans, formerly of Deep Purple, was on lead vocals on this one. Really tight rock and absolutely terrific. So I'm really happy to add this one to the collection. Okay, when I was visiting my son Malcolm recently in Michigan, dropped by a record store called Electric Crown, and this was in Grand Blanc, Michigan. Picked up a few things. Finally have Tim Buckley, great folk artist, and the album Goodbye And. Seen this presented so many times on the VC, and happy to have that one added. I've had this on CD, of course, and now finally have a copy of Lou Reed's Berlin. Well, it's a Lou Reed album, so it's going to be dark, but a particularly dark album produced by Bob Ezrin. I forgot how many people are featured on this album in terms of session people, including Tony Levin plays bass on this one. We've also got Dick Wagner from Alice Cooper fame featured on this. Dark, maybe not for everyone's taste, but Lou Reed and Berlin. And also picked up a Sparks album. I finally have Sparks, Kimono My House. And getting into Sparks albums are getting kind of hard to find, especially used vinyl, but Kimono My House, Sparks, finally have that one. And then locally, I was able to pick up another Sparks record. This is Sparks and Big Beat, and this one's really got kind of that glam rock thing going on. Now, I don't know in terms of, there's so many Sparks albums, I don't know where to start necessarily if you're getting into this band. Larry Graves from Canadian Stud Muffin would have better information on that, and he's got a few videos out on that, but I would think this is not a bad place to start. This really has that nice kind of glam rock sound from Sparks, although Sparks went through a whole bunch of different musical journeys. Speaking of musical journey, I can't get enough of this band, Jane. This is the band Jane from the German Brain Records, and just progressive rock. I cannot get enough of this band. So happy to pick up a Brain label release for this one. And then so there's that, and then I also was able to find Jane Live, a 2 LP set, which I have never seen before. And I don't know, it's just in terms of progressive, almost, at times almost Floyd-like for this band, but heavy too. Just really dig the band Jane. And on the Brain label. Okay, and certainly a terrific artist. This is Steve Hillage and his album L. He does a version of Hurdy Gurdy Man, and it's interesting because he doesn't really do a lot of covers, but he does a cover of Hurdy Gurdy Man, and he also does a cover of It's All Too Much, the George Harrison track from Yellow Submarine, and does a great job with it. So yeah, worth checking that out. It was a surprise that some of the songs included in that one for me. Here's a band I never thought I'd come across. This is the band Egg, the sort of progressive sound of the Canterbury scene, UK, and this is the album The Polite Force. And I think this is maybe their second or third album, the band Egg. Okay. We've got a great Canadian band that deserves more recognition, the band Steel River, and this is the album Weighing Heavy, a band that had kind of a nice, heavy blues rock sound, but still radio friendly enough. 10 Pound Note was the song that was featured on this album, but they also had a great song called Southbound Train, and just good energy with the band, good production. Steel River, a great Canadian band. Okay, a band that I don't know how many albums this band has, but the Marshall Tucker Band and Long Hard Ride. I do love the cover for this one, and more of the the Southern rock stylings of the Marshall Tucker Band. But boy, this band put out a lot of records. Okay, a band I was not familiar with, in terms of this band, in kind of more of the prog folk kind of thing, is the band Stack Ridge, and so this is their debut album, simply called Stack Ridge, and then this is sort of a compilation that came out in the mid '70s, Stack Ridge and Do the Stanley. So yeah, happy to pick these up again. Getting familiar or discovering bands that I was not familiar with before. But Stack Ridge. Okay, and an artist we're familiar with, but another Canadian artist that is definitely worth exploring, especially more of his early stuff, or the stuff he tends to do with his brother, is the artist Gino Vannelli. Now we know the sort of the radio-friendly ballads like "I Just Want to Stop" and "The Wheels of Life," but some of his albums get pretty proggy, especially when working alongside his brother. And so this is a Gist of the Gemini. And these are all like from the '70s. This is Gino Vannelli, Storm at Sunup. Looking very Gino Vannelli on that cover. And Gino Vannelli, Pauper in Paradise. And got some orchestration happening in this one. As I say, these are albums that are worth exploring because they do get into kind of a proggy kind of feel to these albums, so which you would not expect from Gino Vannelli. Okay, a Pat Benatar album I didn't have in my collection. This is Wide Awake in Dreamland. Not bad. Pat Benatar. Okay, and how many Slade greatest hits are there? Here's another one. This is Slade and Sladist. Now this is missing some of the pictures on the inside gatefold, but it's a pretty strong, solid track listing on this one. Another best of from Slade. Okay, Mental as Anything, and this is I believe the U.S. copy of this album. If You Leave Me, Can I Come Too? And the album, in terms of this same configuration, is a completely different cover. I think the track listings are the same, but they're in like a different order. But the one that was released in Canada and I believe through Europe and Australia has that sort of a tape recorder tape deck sort of look to it on the cover. But yeah, so Mental as Anything, If You Leave Me, Can I Come Too? Some great tunes on here. Let's Cook, Too Many Times. Almost kind of had a Doug and the Slugs kind of sound to it. Doug and the Slugs, a Canadian band. Okay, wow. Bonnie Raitt, and this is the album Streetlights. Just a beautiful album from Bonnie Raitt, and this features her absolutely lovely cover of Angel from Montgomery, of course the John Prine song. So really happy to have this. Just a great record overall. Okay, and came across Bram Tchaikovsky, and this is the album Pressure, and this is again a situation where this was released with a different album title and cover. The other alternative is called Russia, The Russians Are Coming, but for I believe the North American release, they decided to call it Pressure, and I believe the songs are the same, but they're all in a different order. It's amazing, when this stuff comes out in like 1980, they were still doing, different European to North American releases, even mixing up the songs, and it's amazing how late that went. But, this kind of nice new wave, sort of post-punk sound, but more sort of a new wave with Bram Tchaikovsky. Okay. We've got the band The Association, a band that I really do enjoy, and this is an early Association album called Renaissance, and from the look of the cover you're thinking it's going to be kind of, this is on Valiant Records, that it's going to be kind of I don't know, sort of almost like early Hollies or something like that. But it's a good record. You can see where they were going with the association with the harmonies, and then the songs would get a little bit more kind of dreamlike. But an album worth checking out, just from, again, the harmonies, and you could just see where this band was going to go musically. But yeah, the association. Okay, I don't often pick up 12-inch records, but I did pick this one up. This is the Fun Boy 3 with Bananarama. Look at Bananarama there. And of course, Fun Boy 3 grew out of the Specials, and this is Ain't What You Do, Just Do It. And as I say, I don't often see too much Fun Boy 3, but happy to come across that one. Okay, this is one I've seen so many times and just never thought I'd come across it. This is Elton John Band featuring John Lennon and the Muscle Shoals Horns, and this is live in concert. This is where John Lennon got up on stage with Elton John towards the end of this concert and did I Saw Her Standing There, Whatever Gets You Through the Night, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. And there's a nice little write-up. This is from November 28th, 1974. And I think this was, as I recall the story, or the legend goes, that John Lennon said that if Whatever Gets You Through the Night goes to #1, because Elton John helped produce that record, appeared on that record, if that goes #1, I'll go on stage and do a show with you. And so he had to be true to his word. And this was the last public appearance in a concert setting for John Lennon, and with him singing Paul McCartney's I Saw Her Standing There. So yeah, just the 3 tracks, but nice to have this. Okay, a band I absolutely love, and Humble Pie, especially early Humble Pie, is kind of hard to find. And this is Town and Country, the immediate UK series. Now, if you're a Humble Pie fan, certainly for this album, you're thinking, what's with the cover? This is a Canadian release, a later release, in terms of, again, Canadian releases, changing the cover sort of thing, and on a completely different label. And I think this one came out at least a few years after the original came out. But a great album, Town and Country, of course, featuring Steve Marriott from the Small Faces, and Peter Frampton featured on the early albums. This has a completely much more sort of organic cover with 2 of the band members indoors, and then the other 2, I think Steve Marriott's outdoors, in the country sort of thing. But this is really, it's predominantly an acoustic album. It does get going into side 2, but it's got a completely different sound than we're used to from later Humble Pie in terms of the real rock and R&B live stuff. But yeah, Humble Pie, Town and Country, and with this sort of weird silver metallic cover, but you can sort of see where they were trying to have, the town, and then you might not be able to see it, but it's like images of cows and sort of like the country. I don't know why they can't just reissue it with the same cover, but they thought this would be clever. So there you go. Okay, this is the band called Freedom. Members of Procol Harum created this band, sort of in continuing kind of proggy rock kind of thing. This was kind of a blind buy. I did enjoy this album. This is Through the Years, and this is on the Catalan label. So pretty much anything that's on there, I'm going to say, okay, yes, that's for me. So yeah, happy to pick that up. This is a gatefold on this one. All right. Okay, and I never thought I'd come across this. I don't know how many times I've seen this shown on the VC, and it just seems to be in just about everybody's collection except mine. But now I have a copy of Frigid Pink, and I picked this up at my local record store, Sound Fixation. This on the Parrot London label, in great condition. We all know this album. It's kind of psych rock, and their cover of House of the Rising Sun on this one, but this one in really nice condition. Because sometimes you find, you see this album a little beat up. Okay, here's one of those artists. I enjoy Ringo Starr, but in terms of all these Ringo Starr records, I think I could be happy just with this one. This is Blast from Your Past, Ringo Starr, and this features pretty much the Ringo Starr hits that you're going to want on just one album. I mean, I'm the Greatest, and some of the Ringo Starr stuff from the the 70s is great, but if you were going to have one album from Ringo Starr, that's not a bad one to have right there. Okay, we've got Warren Zevon. Was not familiar with this particular album. This is Bad Luck Streak in the Dancing School. And just another great Warren Zevon record. And man, the people that appear on this one is, in terms of the special guest stars, of course, Leland Sklar, who plays bass on Amanda Marshall's debut, is featured on here. He's a great session player over the years. David Lindley's on this one. We've also got Don Felder, Glenn Frey, Joe Walsh, and I believe Don Henley is also on this album too. So just incredible, the amount of guest stars featured on this one. So yeah, Warren Zevon. Okay, moving right along. Formerly of John Mayall's Blues Breakers, we've got Keith Hartley Band. This is 72nd Brave. Another great Keith Hartley album, and this features Pete Wingfield on piano and vocals. Okay. Here's a band. This is kind of a blind buy. Didn't know much about this band, and you're thinking maybe by the cover and maybe not by the ring wear or not, that it's kind of, you'd think it's kind of country rock or country folk. The band is simply called Madura, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and they're kind of rock fusion. This is a good album. I don't think they had too much on the Columbia label, and in fact, this is a double album. Of course, again, you know, you got it on full color, and then you're thinking, oh, let's do it again on the inside. But this contains all the original sleeves, the lyrics, and this also includes a big, massive posters. So I was happy. It's always nice when they still have all the goodies inside. But yeah, worth checking out. It's, again, the cover is really deceiving, but it's more kind of good rock fusion. I don't know if you can see all that there. They seem to be, I don't know if they're on a plane or a roller coaster on the farm there or what's going on, but it looked like they're having a good time there. Okay. Former vocalist with the band Spirit, Jay Ferguson, and this is his solo album, Thunder Island. I love the song Thunder Island. That's a song I could hear again and again and just not get tired of it. Guilty. You know, it's just a classic yacht rock sound, and of course that's featured on this one. And it's a, you know, it's a pretty decent album, but nice to have Thunder Island on vinyl. Okay, here's a band that for some reason seems to get, some people don't seem to care for this band, Fat Mattress. I don't know if they have higher expectations or different expectations, because this was Noel Redding's band post the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Now this is their second album, and it's ironic that Noel Redding is actually not pictured or featured with the band. However, he does play guitar on a number of the tracks, and he co-writes a number of the tracks on here. But this is Fat Mattress too, and yeah, well worth checking out again. Okay, soundtrack stuff for you. This is Peter Gabriel and the soundtrack for the movie Birdie, another film I have not seen, but this is a promo copy. And I do love how they say, warning, this record contains recycled material and no lyrics. Just so you know. But Peter Gabriel, Birdie, again, wonderfully moody Peter Gabriel music. Another great band worth checking out, a band I was not familiar with, is the band Crowfoot. And I don't think they had too many records. This is a Canadian pressing on Quality Records, but really nice band Crowfoot. Here's a very unusual record. This is Rocket 88, and this is kind of like a project of Ian Stewart. Of course, Ian Stewart was the keyboardist for the Rolling Stones, who had a real love for rock and roll. So he, along with Charlie Watts, kind of created this band. They did some live stuff, and you've got Jack Bruce also featured on here. Alexis Corner is featured on here, and you know, they do Rocket 88, Roll 'em Up Pete, Roadhouse Boogie, that sort of thing. Very much like Bill Wyman would do later. So many, you know, the great rock and roll artists would do later. But what's slightly different for this, there's only like 7 tracks on here, and they really actually stretch out the songs. So a lot of times when you do these kind of, you know, 50s, ode to 50s music, you tend to do them very faithfully, or maybe more with more horns or big band. But this one, they kind of stretch out the music and kind of explore it. So it's an interesting record. Generally, as I recall, listening to it, was quite well recorded for a live album. But Rocket 88 on Atlantic Records, all the labels. Okay, a Johnny Rivers record. This is Johnny Rivers and LA Reggae. Interesting title. This had one of his last hits before the song Slow Dancing, but this one features Rockin' Pneumonia and the Boogie Woogie Flu. And this is an original issue, still in the shrink, but it's got sort of the die cut kind of thing here, and it's kind of like a slide or whatever sort of going on. But yeah, Johnny Rivers and LA Reggae. A slightly odd title for that record. Okay, another great hard rockin' Canadian band, sort of no nonsense, is the band Tease. A fun band. Their sort of live album called Tour of Japan is definitely worth checking out. I mean, so many great, hits in terms of rock hits or songs that get played on rock radio, On the Loose. Yeah, I mean, it's just no nonsense. And it's interesting, I think one of their biggest hits was the song called Sweet Misery, which is actually more sort of almost like a country feel to it. But kind of what you see is what you get for a band like Tease. Okay, finally have a copy of Ginger Baker's Air Force. I have the second album, but finally got a copy of the first album. And this, of course, I love how the 2-record set, special low price, incredible lineup on here featuring Steve Winwood, Ginger Baker, of course, Steve Winwood, Denny Lane, Chris Wood is featured on this, Rick Gretsch. Graham Bond is also on here, unbelievable. And this is the one where I guess technically that's the front. It's kind of like backwards the way they do this, but almost like the cream gatefold there. But yeah, so good. And I've seen it presented so many times in the vinyl community, so happy to pick that up. Another Canadian artist for you is the artist Dan Hill, who often gets dismissed as really almost too much light ballad stuff. Dan Hill had the hits Sometimes When We Touch, but a nice singer-songwriter whose stuff is definitely worth exploring. And this is his album, Hold On, Dan Hill. And another Canadian band, pretty obscure, is the band Humphrey and the Dump Trucks. And this is the album Hot Spit. I just love the name, Humphrey and the Dump Trucks. Again, a band from the west of Canada, really kind of country folk rock, but more of that sort of country folk kind of thing, writing about the prairies and that sort of thing. And they also did sort of closely in line with CBC Radio. They did, I think, a CBC radio play where they provided the soundtrack. But yeah, some interesting Canadiana here with Humphrey and the Dump Trucks, and on Boot Records, which was also the label for Stompin' Tom Connors. Okay, you want to talk about fantastic musicianship. You can't... Can you do much better than Hot Tuna? Of course, featuring former members of Jefferson Airplane, and this is the live album Double Dose, and this gives you, some great stuff. It's it's acoustic and it's with the full band as well, and just fantastic musicianship. Hot Tuna. Okay, a Kansas album I did not have. This is Kansas and Vinyl Confessions. Not the best Kansas album. It just doesn't really have that Kansas kind of sound to it. Their main vocalist, is it Steve Walsh, who is kind of the main vocalist, is not featured on this one, and it's kind of missing that sound. But Kansas Vinyl Confessions, it's okay. I do like this series on London Records, The World Of, and it's The World Of are sort of like early best ofs on a number of artists. It at one time included David Bowie. I think there's the World of John Mayall, but this is The World of Cat Stevens. So this features early Cat Stevens stuff, including the first cut is The Deepest, of course, which would later be covered by Rod Stewart. Matthew and Son is featured on this, and yeah, there's Cat there. So yeah, these are some interesting albums. Now, there's not very good examples on the back here of this series, The World Of, but yeah, and I think there's a world of like British blues and that sort of thing. Worth checking out. Okay, a Lee Michaels record I did not have, but I've seen presented on the VC. This is Lee Michaels and Beryl. Love Lee Michaels. He had the big hit, Do You Know What I Mean? But each and every album, I think Lee Michaels, terrific artist. and happy to have that one in the collection. Okay, here's a band I don't know a lot about. If you know more about this band, please do comment. A band called the Jazz Crusaders, or then for a while they simply went as the Crusaders. And this is, you know, it's kind of it's jazzy and it's pop. This is a double album. And this is when they were trying to go a little bit more pop, I think, than their more jazzier excursions when they were simply called the Crusaders. Quite a prolific band, lots of records over the years. But if you know more about this band, or maybe letting me know another great album to check out from this band, let me know. The Crusaders, or the Jazz Crusaders. Okay, we've got a Best of Traffic that I've never seen before. This is Heavy Traffic, and it's got pretty much what you need in terms of the song listings. Of course, a little notch out in the corner there. Dear Mr. Fantasy, Empty Pages, Smiling Faces, Feeling All Right. Can't go wrong with that one. Okay, a band not totally familiar with, but a band called Skin Alley, which is kind of a sort of a proggy rock band. This, I think, is maybe their third album, Skin Tight. The band was recommended to me, but listening to this one's okay. I think maybe their first two albums are a little bit better. A UK band, Skin Alley, and the album is called Skin Tight. Okay, and another band that I have seen, not that familiar with, is this is the Best of Aphrodite's Child, and I believe Vangelis was part of this band. So this is definitely proggy, it's classical influence, it's kind of almost big soundtrack kind of feel to it. This one's definitely going to take a few listens to. This is on the Philips label, Rain and Tears, the Best of Aphrodite's Child. And there you go. Okay, another Canadian band. I love this band, Mash McCann. Didn't put out too many records. They had their big hit as the years go by. But this is Mash McCann, The Family. Drummer for this band was Jerry Mercer, who would later go on to April Wine. But yeah, kind of, I've been saying proggy a lot, but it seems to be a number of the records that I tend to pick up, but kind of proggy jazz influences as well with this band. Very interesting group, and well worth the time to explore. And this was on Columbia. Okay, we certainly know this band, Psychedelic Furs. Happy to pick this one up, and this, of course, has the big hit, Pretty in Pink. Psychedelic Furs. Picked this one up in the States when I was visiting my son. Picked this one up actually in Frankenmuth, Michigan, at a record store there. And it's a Canadian band, Teenage Head, and this is their EP, Tornado. Now, as you'll know, as you'll see from the title, that this is when the band had to change their name with pressure from the record company from Teenage Head to Teenage Heads. And then they have since reissued this as like a full-length album with extra tracks, and I believe they just went back to their original name, Teenage Head, and the album Tornado, but also a promotional copy, and just very funny to pick this up in the States. So there you go. Okay, such a great band, Hot Chocolate, and this is their album Man to Man. Unfortunately, it's got a big gash in the cover, but again, funky soul. This has the song You Could Have Been a Lady, which is such a great track, Hot Chocolate, and that song, You Could Have Been a Lady, was later covered by this Canadian band, April Wine. That song not featured on this album, but this is April Wine, and Walking Through Fire, which I also picked up at that store in the States. And this has a couple of big hits, Rock Myself to Sleep and Love Has Remembered Me. And April Wine, yes, back out on tour once again with Miles Goodwin. And another Canadian band, fairly obscure, this one is the band Abraham's Children and Time. They had a number of radio hits in the 70s, including Gypsy, Goodbye, Farewell, Thank You. Radio friendly, but pretty up, sort of indicative of pop music at the time, but not too pop. But yeah, enjoyed picking up Abraham's Children and Time. And it seems to be hard to find Abraham's Children's records. They seem to be few and far between. Kind of Abraham's Children, kind of pop soul, almost in that sort of vein. And then we have the band A Foot in Cold Water, and then this features, of course, the big, big ballad, Make Me Do Anything You Want, which is a lovely tune. And this, you know, it's a nice rock band. Foot in Cold Water had a few albums out. Make Me Do Anything You Want was later covered by Helix, but yeah, happy to come across that one. Okay, the always eclectic, the always unbelievable Al Kooper, and this is the album You Never Know Who Your Friends Are. And every Al Kooper record is going to be a different and unique experience. And of course, Al Kooper, the original frontman for Blood, Sweat and Tears. This is one of those album experiences. Al Wilson, and this is the album Show and Tell. And this is something like when you buy an album like this, you take it out of the sleeve, put the record on the turntable, put the needle down, and then the first song you hear is Show and Tell. And it's just like fantastic. So Al Wilson, great, great soul music, and nice car on the cover. And apparently they do give credit, special thanks to Hal Blaine for use of his 1927 Phantom 1 Rolls Royce. Wow. But yeah, Show and Tell right off the top. So good. Okay, unbelievable harmonies. We're talking Ladysmith Black Mambazo. Wonderful, wonderful South African band, and enjoy their stuff. And usually I don't find their stuff a lot, but when I do, it seems to be generally inexpensive, and it's definitely worth picking up. Okay, another band I don't know too much about. This is a UK band called Mud, very much of the sort of glam rock variety, but they have more of a pop side of glam rock. I'm thinking is the song that they had a big hit with is Tiger Beat. I don't think Tiger Beat's featured on this album, but it has that sort of glam rock kind of thing, and all sort of tongue-in-cheek humor. You know, it's better than working. There they are in the back. Some 70s stuff here with the band Mud, and I believe this is a UK press on this. Okay, another band I get so much into, like in terms of Man for Man's Earth Band, and a band like this is Argent. Just love their stuff. Again, really have explored this band out on vinyl. This is Argent and Counterpoints. And a Phil Collins connection. I had no idea, but thanks to Phil Collins, who played drums and percussion while Robert Henrett, usual drummer and percussionist, was ill. So Phil Collins plays on this. Is there any album Phil Collins doesn't play on? And then there's the album Argent and Circus, and sort of a theme concept album there. So Argent, such a good band. Okay, another Canadian band. This is Mahogany Rush, featuring, of course, Frank Marino, and this is the album, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Maxum. Maybe the cover not in the best of shape, but the vinyl plays okay. And again, the hard rock stylings of Frank Marino and Mahogany Rush, who again often gets compared to Jimi Hendrix, and of course Jimi Hendrix was a massive influence on Frank Marino. Okay. You cannot go wrong with the Chamber Brothers. So this is the Chamber Brothers' Love, Peace, and Happiness. One studio album and one live album recorded at Bill Graham's Fillmore East. The soul rock of the Chamber Brothers. Such a great band. So I'll show you the gatefold here. There you go. They almost kind of have this as like two kind of separate albums kind of thing. Clever. Okay, I don't have any of this artist in my collection until now. This is Laura Nyro, and this is basically her first album repackaged. This was a later 70s release that they decided to simply call it The First Songs with this kind of cover, but what a great album. Laura Nyro, so many of her songs were covered. Wedding Bell Blues was covered by Fifth Dimension. You also have on this particular album, And When I Die, which was later covered by Blood, Sweat and Tears, and the song Stony End, which was covered by Barbra Streisand. So Laura Nyro, and reissue of the first album. Okay, this is a UK artist, Ian Gaume, I believe is how his last name is pronounced, and this is Gone with the Wind, Still in the Shrink. And he's a UK artist that came to Canada and recorded in Canada. He does a cover of the track Come On, but the big hit on this one was Hold On. And for session people, Herbie Flowers, great bass player, plays bass on this one. Okay. Here's a live album that is one of those, I can't believe this is just a single record, like a single disc, but Joe Walsh recorded live, You Can't Argue with a Sick Mind. Of course, all the whimsical Joe Walsh titles, but you know, it's got Rocky Mountain Way. It's just a surprise that Joe Walsh would have a single record for a live album. You'd think it would be a double album, but still pretty good. Pretty good. All right, AC/DC, a later AC/DC release. This is Flick of the Switch. Again, you know, you haven't got the big recognizable AC/DC songs, and this is on Atlantic from 1983, but still good. I mean, in terms of retrospect, it's still enjoyable rock and listen to with AC/DC, and this has got the, you know, the cover there. And pretty straightforward inner sleeve. Not too creative there, keeping the same look there, but rockin' AC/DC. Again, they would kind of lose their footing a little bit through the 80s. Ironically, they started off the 80s or late 70s so strong with Back in Black, but then then would regain ground back in 1989. Okay, moving along, and we've got, oh my gosh, the O'Jays and Ship Ahoy. Powerful cover, great OJ Soul, For the Love of Money, featured on this one. Wonderful OJs. UK band, this is the band Trixter, kind of good rockin' stuff, and this is, I believe, is their debut album, and then followed by Back to Zero on the Jet label. The UK band Trixter. Okay, here's an artist I don't see actually too much. We see her all over YouTube, and certainly depending on where you live, you can come across her albums, but I picked up a live Toyah album. Now, if you know Robert Fripp or Toyah and Robert, they have their Sunday brunch videos and all the videos that they do. So this is Toyah, and this is a live concert specially recorded for inclusion in the ATV television documentary Toyah. So a live Toyah album. Happy to come across this one. And Toyah, you know, a new wave pop kind of post-punk artist in her own right. Toyah. Canadian artist. This artist very radio friendly, kind of AC, almost yacht rock kind of a sound. This is Mark Jordan and Blue Desert. This one not a great one. He's had better albums than this one. Generalities was the radio hit on this one. 1979 on Warner Brothers. Okay, some strange. Looks like the cover's been already faded, but no, that's kind of the look that they were going for. I don't know what that's all about, but looking for some ocean, some sea. But Mark Jordan and the album Blue Desert. Okay, switching gears. We've got a thrift store find. I've got a soft spot for Jackie Gleason. I like Jackie Gleason. I think it was one of those artists. My dad was a big Jackie Gleason fan. This one a little different because this is Silk and Brass. Now, Jackie Gleason Orchestra, often known for really nice, romantic, a lot of strings. This one featuring horns throughout the album, so a bit of a different sound. And on Capitol Records. Okay, a soundtrack recording to another movie I have not seen. This is Coast to Coast, a movie that starred Robert Blake, Tony Blake, and Diane Cannon. But a nice easy soundtrack, easygoing soundtrack. You've got featured Ambrosia, Jimmy Buffett, Rita Coolidge, Johnny Lee, Johnny Rivers, and I think the Johnny Rivers song on this is Slow Dancin', one of his last big hits. Bonnie Raitt's featured on this one, J.D. Souther, so a pretty decent, you know, mellow, easygoing soundtrack to film Coast to Coast. Okay, Jay and the Americans, greatest hits. Jay and the Americans, big radio hits in the 60s, almost operatic voice for Jay, and Some Enchanted Evening, Come a Little Bit Closer, Only in America, Cara Maria, songs to sing in the shower, that sort of thing. So happy to have that one. Okay. Cyndi Lauper and the album True Colors. Of course, we all know the title track, True Colors, covered by Miles Davis. Phil Collins did a vocal version of this one. Overall, I found this album actually a little disappointing. You know, True Colors is okay, but I don't know, the rest of the album, her cover of What's Going On is okay. But yeah, I mean, great cover, you know, big song, True Colors, with Cyndi Lauper, but I just found this album actually a little disappointing as the follow-up to She's So Unusual. Okay, we've got the Jacksons, not the Jackson 5, but the Jacksons, as they had to be called for, I think, contractual issues. We got the Jacksons featuring Michael Jackson on this one, and this is the album Victory. Of course, State of Shock with Mick Jagger is the lead-off track and was the radio hit. And you've got members of Toto, David Page and Steve Porcaro all over this album. Okay, this one has had a few different covers over the years. This is John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, Tough All Over. If you like Bruce Springsteen, and this band pretty much, sounds like Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, for better or for worse. But of course, Eddie and the Cruisers was John Cafferty and the Beaver Brown Band, and this album at least features the band on the cover. This, I think, has also been reissued with, again, that Eddie from Eddie and the Cruisers on it, because that's what people more associate the band with. So that can be difficult when you do a soundtrack to a film and then you get so associated with the soundtrack that it's hard to branch out from that. Okay, let's get into some blues, shall we? How about Paul Butterfield? Later stuff. This is Paul Butterfield's Better Days, and It All Comes Back on Bearsville label, and Something in My Ear, Paul Butterfield and Put It in Your Ear. Ouch. So Paul Butterfield, there you go, on the Bearsville label. Okay, a couple of albums from the, one of the biggest pop duos of all time, Hall & Oates. This one, Hall & Oates. I've seen this album before, never had a chance to listen to it live time. They are on fire on this one. The energy level on this concert, on this recording, is just through the roof. It features the track Rich Girl, Sarah Smile, Abandoned Luncheonette, but worth checking out. I don't know, like, there's just you just feel the energy like right up here. With this live recording. And then we have Hall & Oates studio record, Beauty on the Back Street. Beauty on the Back Street. With Hall & Oates, that one coming out in, I think, 1977, I want to say, for that one. Okay, later, Ray Charles recording when he was doing certainly a number of duets albums. This is Ray Charles and Friendship. So this is Ray Charles with a number of country artists, as you can see, from the likes of the Oak Ridge Boys, Mickey Gilley, Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash on this one, Willie Nelson. I mean, it's an all-star list. Hank Williams Jr. Again, it's okay. It's not, terrific, but it is Ray Charles. It is Brother Ray. Okay, Canadian artist, fairly on the obscure side. This is Christopher Kearney, an East Coast artist who I understand got her start through Gordon Lightfoot, who encouraged him to start a career. And so this is Chris Kearney, I believe his debut album, and then the album Pemmican Stash. Again, very sort of country folk, that style of music. And there was an artist of note, David Bromberg, appears on this album. David Bromberg on Slide and Dobro is featured on this one. So yeah, and both on the Capitol label. Okay, one-time vocalist with the band Squeeze, also of course lead singer for the band Ace, talking about Paul Carrick, and from his solo years this is Suburban Voodoo. And I just like Paul Carrick, his R&B. I just like his R&B stuff from like the 80s, 90s, and to today. Always Better With You featured on this one. Paul Carrick, great vocalist, and happy to pick that one up. Okay, I don't know what more can be said about this particular artist, the great Buffy Sainte-Marie. This is the Best of Buffy Sainte-Marie Volume 2 on Vanguard. I think most of the big Buffy Sainte-Marie hits are on the first volume, or the first Best of Buffy Sainte-Marie. This continues her music from Vanguard. I think the first one is probably, in terms of if you're looking for the big hits, is a better example of her work there. Fairly rare Pete Townshend. You don't see this one too much. So this is a vinyl version of some tracks from the Atlantic video, Pete Townshend's Deep End, the Brixton, England concert. So this is sort of just like an EP. It's only got 4 tracks on here. And this is a promo copy and licensed for promotion only on Atco. And it's got After the Fire, Barefootin', I Put a Spell on You, and Save It for Later. So it's an interesting song selection. But Pete Townshend from Deep End, the Brixton, England concert. Okay, here's a band I really was not familiar with, but boy, really enjoyed the band 801 or 801. This features Phil Manzanera and Brian Eno. You want to talk about fantastic musicianship. So this is the studio album, Listen Now, I think is the name of the record. Also featured on this one is Mel Collins, and Kevin Godley is also featured on this, and this is the live album, 801 Live, and the live, really nice recording, and where the audience, you really can't hear the audience, it's really focused on the musicians, and I think this album was a unique recording where they were able to really plug into the instruments rather than it being a soundboard recording or off mic, that sort of thing, as far as I understand, but both albums really great and fantastic musicianship. And of course, great band, can't go wrong with the Kinks, and this is Preservation Act number 1. I hardly ever see Preservation Act number 2, but I'll have to keep a lookout for that one. A couple of records from Paul Revere and the Raiders. This is Something Happening. This has also got an alternative cover for this band, and then we've got a really odd Paul Revere and the Raiders with a real psychedelic cover, but this is a budget issue, and this is through Pickwick, and this basically features a lot of just basic album tracks. It's not a bad listen, but there's like no hits that you're going to find on something like this, but that you would think it might be like a best of or something like that. So budget one there, and again, Something Happening, Paul Revere and the Raiders featuring Mark Lindsay. And we wrap it up with a couple of thrift store finds in excellent condition. Hits of Les and Mary, of course, Les Paul and Mary Ford, featuring, of course, How High the Moon, and again with his Les Paul's amazing finger picking and the incredible studio techniques that Les Paul did, and of course Mary Ford's lovely vocals. But this is just in lovely condition. And last but not least, I finally found a Martin Denny record. I know so many people seem to easily find them. I rarely come across them, and this is a different one for Martin Denny, kind of the king of exotica, but this is Exotic Moog, or I guess Exotic Moog, I don't know, Exotic Moog, featuring the Moog synthesizer, the Moog keyboards. Again, it's not wild or weird stuff, again, with a song selection like this, but an interesting listen for sure. So I think that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for your patience. If you're still with us at the end of this video, I do appreciate all your comments. And again, if you can comment on some of these bands that I'm not too familiar with, or say, oh, we've got so many great VC members and people that just enjoy the videos and enjoy commenting, and I do appreciate it. All right, that's it for me. We'll chat again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.